God bless the save file. Allowing players to save their progress meant developers could focus on creating bigger, more complex worlds without the worry of increasingly complicated passwords, and were a necessary evolution in the history of video games. Of course, evolution isn't always linear, and there have been some interesting offshoots in the way that save files have been developed. We're taking a look at some of the games that played around with their save files, to both the delight and detriment of the player, mostly the latter. From a simple fourth wall break to actual real-world consequences, each game on this list memorably manipulated a function most gamers take for granted, teaching you that saves are a privilege, not a right. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 video games that messed with your saves. Number 10. Deleting your progress fakeout, Eternal Darkness. For a family-friendly console, the GameCube did surprisingly well for itself when it comes to horror. As well as being the console of choice for the excellent Resident Evil remake and the series' legendary fourth entry, Nintendo's Purple Box played host to the macabre delights of Eternal Darkness, a time-hopping survival horror adventure filled with madness, death, and more elder gods than you could shake a tentacle at. It's the foremost theme, madness, that Eternal Darkness is most remembered for. Alongside the traditional health and magic meters, players are also tasked with maintaining a third status, sanity. Let the green sanity bar hit rock bottom and the game itself will start to break down around you. The most infamous example is the game's notorious memory card wipe. Try to save with a low sanity meter and the game will ask, are you sure you want to delete all your saved games? No matter what you choose, the game assumes you chose yes before proceeding to delete your saves one by one. Fortunately, it all turns out to be a trick. Simply boot up the save screen again and your saves will have been restored to pristine condition. Your heart rate, however, may take a little bit longer to get back to normal. Number 9. Pirate the game and you can't finish it. EARTHBOUND. Piracy might be the bane of video game developers everywhere, but that doesn't mean they can't have a little fun with it. Case in point, EARTHBOUND. Anyone who pirated Nintendo's surreal SNES masterpiece back in the day was the victim of some quality trolling from the legendary studio. Adhering to the rule of 3 strikes and you're out, Nintendo implemented a 3-step program to punish the thieves. Number 1. Pirated versions of EARTHBOUND would freeze at the start, with an anti-piracy warning replacing the title screen. This could only be bypassed by tinkering with the game files. Number 2. Anyone who circumvented the warning and started playing the game would be overwhelmed by a vastly boosted enemy count, turning the quirky JRPG into a tedious grindathon. Number 3. If the player did manage to struggle through the tsunami of enemy encounters and reach the final boss, their reward would be one final game-ending crash just before the battle started, at which point their save data would be deleted with no way to recover it. Vigilante justice Nintendo style, which certainly beats the hell out of DRM. Number 8. Some boss areas can't be cheated. Banjo-Kazooie. While BK was happy to let players cheat their way to infinite items and lives, it was less forgiving of the player messing with Gruntilda's castle, the game's hub. Anyone caught opening doors they shouldn't have or unlocking worlds they didn't yet have access to would get a warning from the impressively bechinned witch. Stop this cheating, Grunty says, or your game pack I'll erase. She isn't joking either. One more hub-altering cheat and she will indeed go ahead and delete your saves. Honestly, this anti-cheating measure is a lot less justifiable than EARTHBOUND's anti-piracy tactics. Once someone buys a legal copy of a single-player game, they should be able to cheat to their heart's content. It's their game and they're not affecting anyone else's experience. Why not let them play it how they want? And why even include that cheat if you're going to punish people who use it? Given this feature was erased from the Xbox Live edition of Banjo-Kazooie, it's clear Rare came to feel the same way. Small comfort for those N64 fans who incurred Grunty's wrath though. Number 7. Killing yourself to beat the game. IMSCARED. Developer Ivan Zanotti's 2012 horror work involves the player being pursued by the grinning ghoul Whiteface. Whiteface is portrayed as a malevolent entity that has literally possessed the player's computer, and the developer fully commits to the bit by having Whiteface communicate with the player outside the game. This trick is done by creating fake files in the game directory, which the player must manipulate to make progress. Unfortunately, no amount of file manipulation can restore your saved game after you reach the true ending. Said ending is reached by having the player character commit suicide to ultimately escape Whiteface. Which is bleak enough, but to really hammer the message home, IMSCARED doesn't just wreck your saves, but the game itself, crashing to desktop whenever you try to play it again. Bleak stuff then! But if you try to mess around with the files one last time, a message from Zanotti himself appears, essentially saying the game is over, thank you for playing, and quote, "You're great, and so is your life. Don't commit suicide, okay? I love you." Very nice. very evil. Number 6. Killing every NPC and breaking the game. Undertale. Toby Fox's Undertale was released in 2015 to great acclaim, with its combination of memorable characters, cheeky fourth wall breaks, and belting tunes winning the hearts of many a player. It also won plaudits for putting traditional video game morality under the microscope in what is now known as its infamous genocide route. Much as the label suggests, the genocide route invokes the spirit of Emperor Palpatine by asking the player to wipe them out, all of them. The them in this case being the game's cast of monsters. Once you go down this path of overkill, the game's save points start displaying the number of monsters left in each region, tacitly encouraging the player to hunt them down and slaughter them. Do so, however, and the game locks you out from replaying it. As Chara, the game's omniscient narrator, puts it, there's no one left to go back to. Woof. Fortunately, if you wait 10 minutes, Chara offers to restore your saves and let you try again. The only cost? Your human soul. Now, obviously we have no way of knowing if Toby Fox is actually harvesting the souls of his audience, but years from now, when you slip free of your mortal shackles and enter the gates of Valhalla, see if you can find a video game developer surrounded by subservient thralls bound to his every whim. That will be Toby Fox, luxuriating in the triumph of his evil scheme. Number 5. Miss your shot and the whole game dies. ONESHOT. Much like Undertale's genocide route, ONESHOT makes its intentions known through its title. ONESHOT is a game that tasks the player with guiding a child called Nico to save their world, and you really do only get one shot at it in the original version. Leave before reaching the first save point and the game would refuse to load again, flat out stating, "You killed Nico, you monster." Fortunately, the updated Steam version is more lenient in this regard, allowing players to pick up where they left off. To compensate though, the game does have one more bit of save-related trickery. Upon completing the game for the first time, the game pulls the now familiar trick of locking the player out of their save game. To play again, you have to go to the game's exe file and remove a file in the same folder to continue. This lets you load up a new game plus and carry on to the game's true ending. Number 4. A game where you destroy your own personal files. Lose-lose. Between ONESHOT and IMSCARED, it seems like there are a bunch of indie games that quite like the file deletion mechanic, and this next game takes that idea to its absolute extreme. Lose-Lose is a shoot-'em-up that tasks the player with manning a spaceship and vanquishing a horde of alien invaders. So far, so video games, but Lose-Lose ups the stakes considerably higher than your average shooter. If you're killed, the game deletes itself from your hard drive, forcing you to start over, which isn't too bad as it's a meager download and a score attack game to boot. What's worse is when you win. Lose-Lose's unbelievably stupid premise is that each alien in the game represents a file on your computer. Kill the alien and the file is deleted permanently. Photos, Word documents, even System 32 itself. All cattle in the slaughterhouse that is Lose-Lose. A game that deletes its own save files might be regarded as genius. A game that deletes others looks like madness. Number 3. The game that erases itself. KILLSWITCH. What could be more potent than a game that deletes itself when you die? A game that not only pulls the same trick, but erases itself so thoroughly that no one is sure if it ever really existed. KILLSWITCH was a side-scrolling point-and-clicker in which players had to guide a woman named Porto through an undead-infested mine. There was also a demon called Ghast, who was literally impossible to control as he was completely invisible. And that's not even the weirdest thing about the game. Allegedly, once KILLSWITCH was completed, the game would not only uninstall itself, but wipe out every file so thoroughly that there was no way to retrieve them again. One and done, in its purest form. Given the game's prevalence on sites like Creepypasta, it's easy to assume that maybe it never existed in the first place. Yet it does, indisputably, linger on in some form. Kotaku even played through it, although that was likely a fan recreation inspired by the original myth. Number 2. Can you sacrifice your own save? NIER Replicant, version 1.22474487139, and so on. Rounding off the list, we have the NIER duology, because of course we do. And yes, that sort of spoils number 1, but what else would it be? Replicant, the first game in the NIER saga, contains one of the most well-known examples of save screwing in video games. To summarize, after completing the game again and again and again, the protagonist is finally within touching distance of his goal, a cure for his sister's terminal illness. The catch? To attain it, it, he must sacrifice everything. And by everything, the game means all of your save data. We'll give the developers credit, it is certainly a memorable dilemma. Which means more to the player, the life of the digital child they've purportedly been playing the game to save, or the real world hours they spent in pursuit of that goal. Because once those saves are gone, they're gone for good. Or at least that was the case. In the recent remake, the developers evoked the spirit of Steve Jobs and added one more thing, a chance to regain your saves through one final playthrough. It's certainly a lot more hopeful than the original game's downer ending, and echoes developer Yoko Taro's increasingly optimistic worldview, a view best encapsulated in number 1, becoming something greater. NIER Automata. And here you have it, the best end credits in all of video games. NIER Automata's end credits have gone down as a seminal moment in gaming history, and for good reason. No other game has made such a poignant, triumphant statement about the power of the human spirit. Yes, we know how hyperbolic that sounds, but just trust us, if you've experienced this credit sequence, you'd be thinking the same thing. Automata ends with one final choice: to complete an impossible shoot 'em up to save the lives of the main characters, or to give up in the face of failure. And the insane difficulty means you will fail. Choose to persevere, and the developers assist you with a squadron of ships to up your firepower and act as much needed bullet shields. The catch? Each ship in the squadron is actually made up of the deleted save files that other players got rid of in order to give you a chance to succeed. Which is just pretty special and lovely even if you haven't played the game. Once you reach the end, you're given the same chance to help others at the same cost. Given what you've just experienced, and it really is an experience, only the most churlish would refuse. TLDR, I regained my faith in humanity, and all it cost me was a lousy save file. That's the end of our list, but do let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other video games that messed with your save files. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness.